Welcome into the I-80 Boys podcast. We got Notre Dame versus Miami. Christian, we're going to start it off with you and those Notre Dame Fighting Irish.
Yeah, Chris, before we get into this, I want to say, first of all, last year we did nothing but shit on Notre Dame. We just could not say nice things about them. There was times where we would just skip right over them. And, hey, hats off to Notre Dame. 14-2 season, made it all the way to the national championship. Going into this offseason, I was guilty, and Notre Dame fans did not let me forget that I said the wrong name there. I said Jordan Love instead of Jeremiah Love. Cool. Maybe if you win the national title, I'll get that right going forward. Until then, let's talk a little bit about Notre Dame, how they match up in this one, okay? Notre Dame returns 11 starters from last year. 5 on the offense, 6 on the defensive side of the ball. Some of their top players, C.J. Carr coming in at quarterback for them, running back Jeremiah Love, wide receiver Jaden Greathouse, and then they get 3 starting offensive linemen back from last year, so that's pretty good. Look, the C.J. Carr experience starts off on the road. Yes, he was a very highly touted 4-star, but how is that going to translate, Chris? He is, look, he is yet to throw a collegiate pass. We do not know what this kid's going to look like. I would imagine there might be a little bit of maturation going into this, and we're going to have to see him develop in front of our eyes. We'll see. Right? Notre Dame struggled to throw the ball last year at points, and I want to touch on that. But they were still able to make it to the Natty after riding that rushing attack and Riley Leonard. Also speaking of that, right, a big part of Notre Dame's offense last year, Riley Leonard's ability to run the football. He was number 2 in terms of rushing production on that team last year. You're missing out on 17 touchdowns and 900 yards rushing. Carr isn't anywhere close to being able to do that as a runner. And so it'll be interesting to see how he kind of picks up from that. Miami's defense last year cost him a chance to make the playoffs. Chris, you're going to touch on him here in a minute. So how's this new Miami defensive coordinator, Corey Heatherman, going to come in, and how is that going to look against this a team that I would imagine wants to run the football and maybe at points take their shots with C.J. Carr? The strength of this Notre Dame team, on the other hand, is on the defensive side of the ball. They bring back 6 starters from a top 10 defense last year. And they also bring in Chris Ash as a defensive coordinator to replace Al Golden. I do think there's going to be a little bit of fall off going from Al Golden to Chris Ash, mainly because Marcus Freeman does not really call the defense there. He's more of like a prototypical like CEO type coach. He kind of oversees the program, does all that stuff. Yeah, I'm sure he probably has his hands involved with it, but he doesn't call the defense. So it'll be interesting to see how Chris Ash does there for Notre Dame. The defense should be licking its chops, right? Beck led the SEC last year in interceptions thrown. And while, yes, Notre Dame did lose some players like Xavier Watts and Jordan Clark, they do rotate well, and they also add Devontae Smith from Alabama. The weakness of the Notre Dame defense at times last year was their ability to stop the run. And the Hurricanes do lose Damian Martinez, but Mark Fletcher and Jordan Lyle, they should be able to get going, I would think, in this one. Chris, tell me a little bit about Miami.
Yeah, I mean, out with Cam Ward, right? He was probably the best quarterback in the country last year, hands down. In with Carson Beck, you alluded to him, who I think took a lot of shit from Georgia fans last year. He did throw for a ton of yards. Interceptions plagued him, especially in the middle of the year. But considering how good Cam Ward was, I mean, it's a pretty good pickup for Miami, right? I mean, I think Carson Beck, they could have done a hell of a lot worse. The Canes, they just came up short last year, too, of reaching the college football playoffs. They had a really good season. They were undefeated for a majority of that, and then they had those 2 key losses at the end of the year to Georgia Tech and Syracuse. Look, they're going to have to be pretty good again this year. I have them second in the ACC. I expect good things out of them. They could potentially win the AC depending on what Clemson does. But outside of Beck at quarterback, the Canes lost quite a few stars from that explosive offense last year. If anything, Mario Cristobal, though, we know he's a hell of a recruiter. He brings a lot of talent in there, and they hit the portal relatively hard again this season. At wide receiver, they picked up C.J. Daniels from LSU, Tony Johnson of Cincinnati, give them a little more explosiveness out on the edge there. As far as this defense goes, I talked about it all last year. I know you did too, Christian. It was god-awful. I mean, it was terrible at times. They gave up more than 28 points 8 out of their 13 games. I mean, that's rough. And that's an ACC schedule, too. This isn't the SEC or the Big Ten. I'm not trying to shit on the ACC, but my God, man, you can't be giving up those kind of points. And it seemed like every game, Christian, was Miami had to score and Cam Ward 45 points to try to win a football game. We remember that Cal game out on the West Coast last year, that late game. But Miami does have some people returning. They got, like I said, they don't lack in talent there, including edge rusher Reuben Bain Jr. This kid is a stud. They got linebacker Wesley Bistain, and the secondary has been completely retooled as well. So a lot of unknowns. I can't sit here and say, hey, their defense is going to be much more improved. I would like to think so, just with as bad as it was last year. It's hard to be much worse, but we'll see. Christian, you got anything else to add before we get into the picks here?
Yeah, a couple things there, Chris. I mean, first of all, if you're Notre Dame, is there going to be a natty hangover going into this year? You know, where you just like adrenaline dumped last year, you got in the rhythm, and then this year you've got some new players at key positions, and it doesn't all really add up. And then at the end of the year, we're talking about Marcus Freeman potentially being on the hot seat. Big question to look for there. Notre Dame fans are going to tell me I'm crazy. They're going to win every single game, and they're going to win the national title this year with a true, well, not true freshman, but with a freshman quarterback. Will be very interesting to see. On the other side, Mario Cristobal, guy's on the hot seat. What's he going to do this year? This is a big game right here with a lot of questions on his side of the football as well. Can they get over the hump here and start this year off right and get Cristobal off the hot seat? Chris, I'm going to go ahead and give you my prediction. Give me Notre Dame 24, Miami 27.
Ooh, damn. Okay, I'm going the other way here. And just to explain here, like I do think Miami's going to be a very good team this year. I do. I think they'll be much more improved defensively overall. But man, what a tough game. I know they're at home, but still, man, you got to play Notre Dame. Notre Dame to me is just a team with a solid defense year in, year out. You mentioned it, the quarterback spot is a little bit of a question mark. But I just don't see Miami stepping into this game lights out right away, playing, a high octane type of offensive style like they did last year. I got Notre Dame in this one, 27, Miami 17.